Alex, I would love for you to kind of talk about how this concept that's like, we're trying to diet on as many calories as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And why, it's like, well, yeah, you could just like drop into a drastic deficit, but like that doesn't work. So you want to kind of take the mic on that one?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, a lot of people approach dieting as like, just, I'm going to slash everything that I'm eating. They're going to cut out a lot of foods and they're going to cut out a lot of calories. Yeah, that works in theoretically and technically, but the problem is that like good, you're not going to have a really easy time like sticking with it. That's where it just becomes really difficult. Everybody, I always have this saying, well, some of my clients, like everybody want to be lean till they hungry. Like, like if you are sitting there, slashing off like, 25% of your diet or even more than that, like, let's just say you're eating 2,000 calories and you start, hey, I'm going to go down to like 1,200 calories. You're going to be starving and it's not really going to be very sustainable. And it's also just going to be very hard to implement because that's a huge difference in terms of how you are eating. Like, I mean, yeah, I said earlier, like I haven't changed very much because I didn't cut very much. Like it's not that many calories, but if you're cutting like 800 to 1,000 calories, that's almost an entire. That's like a meal at that point. Like that's more than a meal if you're having that's a meal if you're having like a 2,000 calorie diet, right? So yeah, that's a drastic change. So you don't want to make like super, super drastic changes if you're trying to make the most sustainable fat loss efforts.
Well, and also too, it's like the quote I would always come back to is it's like the fat loss that comes fast is often the fat loss that doesn't stay. And so I think the issue, right, is it's like at some point or another, every single person has, whether it was like following Pinterest or, magazines at the grocery store or whatever, but it's like they would follow some crazy diet or end up just eating, really, really low calories. And so the issue is that it would work, right? And so it's like, and that I think definitely that's a thing where it's like, we can like do something really stupid like that and it works. And it's like, that happens one time. And then your body's like, absolutely not. Like we are not doing this shit again. And so it's like the next time you try to pull that, obviously the, flags start getting thrown and stuff like that. So it's like understanding also just again, if we talk about the analogy of like, if we can get from A to B a billion different ways, if we have the option of eating, say 1,800 calories, or we have the option of eating 1,200 calories, well, why would you choose to suffer more than you need to? Like if the outcome is going to be the same, because it's like, I think again, people just get so concerned about like, how can I lose this as much as possible, as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not the sauce. Like we're just looking for kind of this transient thing. So it's like when you're setting up that deficit, the way I would, especially if you're doing it self-guided, like if you're not working with a coach, I always kind of encourage people, well, like, hey, physically like set this up on your calendar. Like if we're starting this party on a Sunday, like, hey, go in your calendar. And so my recommendation would be start with a 10% deficit and then wait 2 to 3 weeks and then kind of assess, see what's happening. Keep in mind that, again, the scale isn't only the marker that we might want to be paying attention to. So definitely be taking measurements, be taking pictures, because, again, we can lose weight and the scale doesn't change, or we can change your body composition and the scale doesn't change. So it's like just double check yourself in that manner, because, again, it's like most people, when you see yourself every single day in the mirror, you're gonna be like, oh, I don't look any different. And then you see your friends and they're like, yo. So definitely, it's like, just check yourself. But, my recommendation, if I was going to give like a general, how to DIY your fat loss, it would be like, hey, start at a 10% deficit, wait 2 to 3 weeks, kind of see, have we made any progress? Do things kind of seem to be the same? Okay, let's go to that 15% deficit. Same thing, wait 2 to 3 weeks. And basically at whatever point the scale starts moving or we start seeing changes, that's where you stay. You don't get greedy. You don't keep taking from the piggy bank and be like, I'm just... Though, like... No, they do. Get your paws out of the cookie jar, man. Like just freaking sit down and be patient. So it's like whatever point the scale starts changing, we start seeing changes, just keep riding that, because, again, it's like at some point you're going to have to keep dropping calories, or you're going to have to start adding in more movement. And so we don't want to do that, sooner than we have to. I think that I really love the way that the boys from Mind Pump Media talk about dieting and stuff like that too, because they're always like, yo, like, save any additional steps, save any additional cardio for the end of the thing, not the beginning of the thing. Because again, it's like, if we're changing all these things, we just don't know what's working. And again, like, patience is the hardest thing, because all of this is going to take longer, than you want it to. But, at whatever point, like, let's say you're at a 20% deficit, you're seeing progress, and then all of a sudden, it's just like week 2, week 3, week 4, like nothing going on. What would be your initial inkling there, Alex, in terms of, would you continue to take away food? At what point are you like, oh, okay, let's also start adding in additional steps as a way of, getting more calories? Like, where is that for you?
I mean, I think it depends on the individual, right? But, if we've already cut quite a bit of calories off, there's only really so much that I would suggest cutting. I think we talked about this last time, but I mean, if somebody hasn't lost and they've cut like 25% off their diet, or they've lost maybe and they're at that point, I think that's where you got to think about, hey, like, maybe we take a break here for this for a little bit, right? But, if someone wants to keep going, yeah, I mean, the only way that you can keep it going is if you continue to create a deficit. So, I mean, it really is going to be like, hey, we have to reduce your calories further, or we have to increase your energy expenditure somehow. But there's definitely finite levels to where that will not go any further. And I think it is important to, like, if you do go into a diet, have a ceiling, like, or like at least like a bottom level that you're gonna set for yourself. Like, don't go below that. And I think that's where too, like, working with a coach is very important, because a coach can kind of set that boundary for you. I've known a lot of people who I've, worked with, and they come across and then they're like, I asked them about what their diet was like. And then when they cut, and they're like, yeah, I was eating like 800, 700 calories, and, they're a full grown ass woman. Right. So, that's, to me, that's not right. So, and they didn't really have any knowledge or guidance or experience with that. So I think that's where really a coach is coming into play. Like, if you were cutting your calories and you're going pretty low, and you haven't, and you feel like you have to go low, or you haven't seen the result, I think that's where you got to, like, take a step back and then go hire someone to help you.
Totally. And also, it's like, I hate the important caveat, but it's like, also just like double check yourself in terms of like, oh, are you forgetting to log your coffee? It's like, I forget what I went to track yesterday, but it like, it suddenly added like 3,000 calories to my stuff. And I was like, oh. And so I had to, like, it took me a second to figure out, like, where's the actual serving size for this? Because it just defaulted to a weird thing. So it's like, sometimes people they like track stuff, but then it's not actually the right serving size that matches like what they actually had.
Yeah. I mean, if you've double checked your due diligence, your adherence to the plan, you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you believe, and you still haven't seen the things happen, and you've cut, I really do think that that's where you got to look some outside help for that.
I will say, I would add too, it's like, if you are somebody that you're just not generally super active. So like, let's say, yes, you do go to the gym, 3 to 4 to 5 times a week, but you're not necessarily getting the right step output. So if you're somebody that you're really just getting, like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 steps, sometimes it really is like, you just got to move. And so it's like, that's why we kind of recommend, it's like, hey, a really great baseline is kind of getting that like 7,000 to 8,000 steps a day. Because it also just, like, that level of output also just changes your hunger. So it's like, if I've ever had personally a day where I was just like glued to my computer, I'd be like, shit, like, I'm not hungry if I don't like get my steps, even though I do like train hard and stuff like that. But it's like, if you're at that point where you're like, okay, I'm at a 20 or 25% deficit, I don't really want to cut my food anymore. Basically what you would be looking at is the idea that if you kind of add on getting an additional like 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day, we're just going to have a little bit more calorie burn there. And so, if you're currently averaging 7,000 steps a day, basically what that would look like is, hey, well, I'm going to take that up to 10,000 or maybe 11,000 steps per day. And same thing, like let's say, again, at a future date, you're like, okay, like I still want to keep going. I still feel good. But again, I'm not trying to cut my calories any further. Well, maybe you do. It's like you might end up getting, 12,000, 15,000 steps a day. But it's just, again, it's kind of another tool in the toolbox of we don't necessarily want to add additional cardio because that's going to add that additional strain and recovery kind of component. But it's like, think about it. It's like if you just go for a walk or you go walk your dog, like
demanding.
It's not super demanding. It's not going to be changing or influencing your hunger levels a ton. So that is kind of the toolboxes. It's like, well, at the end of the day, we either have to move more or we have to, kind of take away more food. So that would kind of be our advice on that one. So cutting calories too fast, too aggressively, aka getting greedy AF.